Mission Impossible series is one of the most popular movie franchises in the world. Starring Tom Cruise, the series features explosive moments, incredible action scenes, and some of the most wild stunts you can see on the big screen. The series is so popular that across 7 movies, it's brought in over $4 billion at the box office. That kind of revenue, consistency, and recognizability is what makes entertainment executives froth at the mouth looking for more revenue streams to capitalize on their brand. Books, toys, action figures, TV shows, you name it, and especially the most popular home entertainment medium, video games. But despite its popularity, you'd be surprised to hear that there haven't been many Mission Impossible games. The last one that we got was all the way back in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. So I decided to go back and play all of the Mission Impossible games ever made so I can rank them all. One will be crowned with the coveted S rank, and one will be kicked to the curb as the worst game in the franchise. If you've played any of these games and you have opinion about them, let me know in the comments below. Big thanks to my channel members who support me. If you'd like to join this ragtag group of agents, you can join the channel for only $1 a month. Wake up! Before Tom Cruise took up the helm as Ethan Hunt in the first film released in 1996, the franchise actually started as a TV show 30 years prior, all the way back in 1966. And 20 years later, the series eventually got rebooted by ABC, but ABC was messing around with the time slots and stuff and just forced it to compete against The Cosby Show. And of course, going up against Bill Cosby left Mission Impossible drugged, beaten, and raped in the ratings, leading to it being canceled after only 2 seasons. And of course, with ABC bringing the show around for popularity in the late 80s and early 90s, they had to release some video games for it, right? And that brings us to the first game released in the franchise, releasing in 1990 for the NES, simply titled Mission Impossible. Not to be confused with Mission Impossible, or Mission Impossible. This one was published by Konami and developed by their subsidiary Ultra Games, the same development studio that blessed us with the Prophet, the Savior, the man, the myth, the legend, Hideo Kojima. 2 years after developing Kojima-san's debut, Metal Gear, Ultra Games would release Mission Impossible on the NES. And it's just a classic NES game. Just listen to this music when you boot it up. The story is based on the 80s TV show. You control 3 agents, Max, Grant, and Nicholas, as they seek to take down the Sinister Seven, not to be confused with the Sinister Six.
Me and you can rule this city, Spider-Man!
The Sinister Seven kidnap some scientists and plan to make them use their super smartness to bypass military security installation stuff to start a nuclear war. And of course, it's up to the IMF to stop them. It did some unique things for the NES at the time. Like during the game, you can freely switch between each of the 3 agents by pressing the start button. Each agent has their own health bar, and when one agent dies, they're gone for the rest of the missions, and you can continue on with the survivors. But each agent also has their own unique abilities, so if one dies, you can end up locking yourself out of being able to progress. Max is the only one with a gun, and he can plant some bombs that he can detonate later by pressing the same button. Grant runs fast, he punches people's lights out, and he throws grenades. And Nicholas is Australian, so of course he uses the only weapon an Aussie could use.
I was demonstrating an ancient Aboriginal sport.
He can also put on disguises to dress up like the enemy thugs and walk past them, but it's only for like 2 seconds, which isn't nearly long enough. It's really freaking difficult. Pretty much right off the bat, there's a sewer level, and there are enemies that can push you off a ledge to an immediate death. And when the game starts, you're walking on the street and your immediate instinct is to just shoot the other people because, you know, this is a game and all. But some of these people are civilians, and shooting them desyncs the agent from the animus, and they're lost for the rest of the mission. It's just way too difficult, and it plays like an action game, not like a spy or an espionage game. There's some levels where you're driving a speedboat and you're shooting at enemies. And eventually at the end of the game, you end up convincing the smart computer to play a game, and it eventually gives up because there can never be another winner. And if this sounds a lot like that War Games movie, yeah, exactly. It's basically just War Games. And yeah, this one was a pretty good action game for the NES if you can get past the old school difficulty. This one definitely belongs in the C tier. The next game in the franchise came a year later with 1991's Mission Impossible for MS-DOS. Konami also made this one, so it seems like they just had the license for a bit. This one was a little bit more of a point-and-click adventure game where you assemble your team of agents from a roster of 20 agents, each with their own unique stats, skills, and attributes. The gameplay is really heavily reliant on stealth and espionage with dialogue choices. You'll be solving puzzles and hiding in plain sight in order to accomplish your missions. The goal is to dismantle a global conspiracy, and there's not really a plot here in the traditional sense. Instead, it's just a series of missions with puzzles to test your abilities. You'll end up doing some infiltrations to gain access to buildings without being detected. You'll do some surveillance on some targets. Sometimes you'll do some sabotaging of some enemy installations. And at the end of it all, you'll extract with your allies and with the information that you've gathered. It's kind of boring. I just couldn't get into it. Even reading reviews from when it was released, people were saying the same thing, that it's just really slow. Definitely deserving of the F tier as the worst Mission Impossible game ever made. Don't spend your time trying to play this one.
Not again.
Now it's time to move on to the 3D era of Mission Impossible games. The first Mission Impossible movie hit theaters in 1996. Tom Cruise hanging from wires, facemakers, and exploding gum. What's not to love? It was enough of a success that the next Mission Impossible game would be a loosely based movie tie-in game, the first and only. But before we talk about it, we gotta make a little pit stop. The year is 1997. Your Tamagotchi just died during recess. Your friend who's borrowing your Game Boy says he forgot it at home, again. At the Scholastic Book Fair, you read through the cheat code book that you can't buy because your mom said you have to buy a real book this time. But hey, at least it's Friday and mom said that you can rent a game for the weekend. So you went to Blockbuster, or in my case, Hollywood Video, picked out a game, brought it home, popped it into your clear purple N64, and discovered one of the greatest shooters of all time. That's right. That other iconic spy franchise hit the video game world and set fire to all expectations. GoldenEye 007 crashed into the scene 2 years after its movie was released and set the standard for what spy action games should be doing. It also did that for first-person shooters, but that's not really the topic for this video. If you had 4 people in a room in GoldenEye on N64, everyone was staying the night. 4 players all crammed around the big screen 20-inch CRT TV, squinting at their corner in the screen that's only the size of a Pop-Tart, by the way, arguing over who picked Oddjob and whether the golden gun is actually cheating, and the entire time someone is just screen peeking and killing you the moment you round a corner. GoldenEye really did change everything, and every game released after it had the misfortune of being compared against it. And unfortunately for Ocean Studios, the very next year, in 1998, we saw the release of Mission Impossible on the Nintendo 64. And if you were like me, you spotted that bright red box on the rental shelf, saw it said Mission Impossible on the cover and thought, oh yeah, this is gonna be just like GoldenEye.
I know you. You're Ethan Hunt, the mole. Alert! Alert!
Despite being meant to tie in and release with the movie in 1996, it ended up getting delayed, switching developers, and coming out in 1998. I ended up playing the PlayStation 1 port that came out about a year after the N64 version for this review. It added some improved visuals, some cheesy voice acting, but more importantly, it added some really kick-ass music. It loosely follows the main plot of the movie, but with some tweaks here and there. It's got the scene with stealing the knock list where you hang from the wires. It's got the exploding gum. It's even got a train scene from the end of the film with the reveal that Jim Phelps was the mole all along. There's this heavy use of the facemaker as you knock out guards and dignitaries and you assume their identities in order to bypass security or to frame people for your crimes. But unfortunately, it's also a victim of outdated controls. And even for the time, these were outdated controls. Ethan controls like a tank, and trying to walk in a straight line is like taking a field sobriety test after pounding 8 White Claws at your girlfriend's sister's birthday party. Aiming your gun is a chore because you have to stop in place to aim, and the vertical axis is inverted with no option to change it. The graphics aren't anything special, and there's no multiplayer, which was definitely disappointing in the wake of GoldenEye. Some of the levels have this really brutal checkpoint system, and it can be kind of difficult to know what you're supposed to do. It's really easy to make mistakes and have to start an entire level over again. I had to look up a walkthrough a couple of times just to figure out where I was supposed to go and what I was supposed to interact with in what order. If you're playing on the Impossible difficulty, it adds more objectives to each level. The last few missions are just way too long and feel like they're tacked on since you've already taken out Jim Phelps and Max and you've cleared Ethan's name as the suspected mole. Instead, you're just kind of running around in these big snowy areas waiting for an arms deal to take place, and then you surprise the enemy and take them out. I was just getting so tired of the bad controls and running back and forth across these giant maps to complete the objectives. Now, it might sound like I didn't enjoy this game, but that couldn't be further from the truth. For what it lacks in polish with the controls, it makes up for it with the goofiness and the espionage-focused mission design. There are more than a few missions where you have to not only sneak past enemies, but also use your gadgets and the facemaker to blend in and reach your objectives, even if the objectives don't make the most sense, like in this scene where I have to create a distraction in order to jump out of the window to escape the CIA.
I better wait a few more seconds. They're too close to me.
The level that's inspired by the wire hanging scene where you have to steal the knock list was definitely the highlight of the entire game. The controls are absolutely dog water as you try to ascend, descend, and swing around to avoid the lasers, and the voice lines become like nails on a chalkboard when you've attempted it more than a few times.
Yeah, those lasers sting.
Freeze, pal. One.
But despite that, it's relatively faithful to the movie, and it's such a cool and badass spy moment that makes you feel like a secret agent when you do finally complete it. So just the overall goofiness of this game is something I appreciated. It's charming, it's fun, it's difficult. It's a game that's way more representative of the PlayStation 1 era than people probably give it credit for. Overall, this deserves to be in the S tier as the best Mission Impossible game.
Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
Now tell me who's the fruit booty!
That same year also had the release of a Game Boy Color game to go alongside the N64 and PlayStation 1 version. I did play through this one. The first thing you'll notice is the way the camera moves as you start to move, which is really distracting and disorienting, and I don't understand why game companies were doing that for so long. It definitely made the experience pretty annoying. I don't know who got it in their head that this would be a good sound for the alarms, but by the time I was done with this game, I wish that they had used some lube for my ears. You'll hear this alarm constantly throughout the game, so you better be prepared to turn off all the volume and just play in silence, or you can risk your ears bleeding. It's definitely a C tier game, but since they didn't use lube, it's a D tier.
Later, bitch!
The last console Mission Impossible game release came in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. Operation Surma takes place between the second and the third films and tells an original story of Ethan Hunt, Luther, and the IMF gang attempting to take down a suspicious corporation named Surma that's in possession of a program called Ice Worm that's apparently capable of hacking into any security system in the world. Somewhere along the way is this lab that's making these 3 deadly neurodioxin chemical weapons for the fictional Ugarian government. So Ethan and the team head to Ugaria to neutralize the neurodioxin, eliminate the Ugarian leaders, and save the good guy scientists that are being forced to do all of this villainy. What's really cool here is that Ving Rhames reprises his role as Luther. Tom Cruise didn't lend his voice to Ethan Hunt, but much to my shock, I immediately recognized and felt that warm and cozy embrace of the voice of Steve Bloom.
Ethan Hunt, I've been hired to escort you from Ugaria. I've accessed Dr. Norton's computer.
Holy f***, I'm coming.
Steve Bloom being in this game immediately bumps it up a tier. I don't care what you have to say, his voice makes everything better. He actually ends up voicing some of the side characters and some of the guards too, which sort of tricked me into thinking it was Ethan using the facemaker to disguise himself as the guards. Like in this scene where we're trying to get the laptop from this woman and a guard stops her and demands that she leave the laptop behind.
Afraid not, madame. I have specific instructions prohibiting you from entering with any computer equipment.
The gameplay definitely takes inspiration from the success of games like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid. Where the N64 game's missions felt more like, espionage, this leans into all of the tropes of the stealth action genre and takes itself way too seriously. You've got your persistent night vision goggles, you need to stealth around by climbing on pipes and performing stealth knockdowns, and hacking into cameras to avoid detection. It's just too bad that the enemy can, for some reason, detect you through walls and around corners that they shouldn't be able to see through. It's really cool that there are a bunch of gadgets that you get to use, so that makes it feel a little bit different from Splinter Cell, but you can ignore most of those gadgets, like the sonic scanner that you get that helps you look through doors to see if there are any enemies on the other side. It's really cool in theory, but I don't think I ever ran into a situation where I needed to use it. There's also a remote camera control device that lets you see the cameras and see the footage in the feed, But the guards and the enemy AI isn't really up to standard to the point where you need to use those cameras in order to figure out what patterns and what paths they're going to take to avoid detection. You also get an electronic warfare gun to shoot cameras in order to hack them, or you can shoot it at a wall to create a distraction, or you can shoot an enemy to add their vision cone to your map. There's also this really cool microcord gun that's used for reaching pipes and high ledges, but it definitely comes from that era before Kill Switch, Resident Evil 4, and Gears of War solidified the standards for third-person shooter controls. Like, for some stupid reason, anytime you aim with your gun, you're peeking over your left shoulder, but he holds the gun in his right hand, meaning that you're kind of always exposed and ready to get shot if you're trying to shoot around a corner. And even when you're on cover and you're trying to go to aim, Ethan exits cover, so he doesn't just lean out of it. It makes the action sequences way more difficult than they should be. There are 5 acts in this game, and the 5th act takes a turn from the stealth action focus to full-on action like you'd expect from a Mission Impossible movie. Ethan and the IMF discover that the bad guy is using a plane as his base of operation, so Ethan jumps from a plane that's much higher in the air, then uses a jetpack to catch up and fly into the cargo bay.
He ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3.
And after we fight through the plane, the bad guy ends up getting pushed out of a door, and without a parachute, Ethan jumps out after him. In midair, we steal one from another soldier, then we fly to catch up with the bad guy. Then we land at the Surma Corporation building where we take down the bad guy and his invisibility cloaking device. It's over the top, it's really stupid, and I ate up every moment of it.
You know what really grinds my gears?
It's too bad that it's just weighed down by the terrible controls and the abrupt ending that follows. And I actually have a little bit of history with Operation Surma. When it first came out, my best friend got it for his birthday, and me being the persistent little kid that I was, I pestered him into letting me borrow it while I was still at his birthday party. So I took it home first, beat it in like 3 days, and when I finally gave it back to him, I spoiled all of the ending before he'd ever even had a chance to play it. And after replaying it in the current year, I think it's a good game with some problems. And I know this is entirely my opinion, but hey, it's my video and my rankings, and I'm just not much of a fan of the stealth action genre. The mechanics and the controls here are just a little too janky for me to say that I enjoyed playing it. So if you like the stealth action genre, you probably would enjoy this more than I did. If someone said that this was an S tier game, I wouldn't be surprised, and I kind of wouldn't even argue with them that much either. But I put it in the A tier.
Whoa!
And finally, we'll wrap this up with the last game that came out. This is Operation Surma, but on the Game Boy Advance. It tries to do a tactical stealth experience too. You've got the most awkward karate chop for taking down guards stealthily. There are a couple of guns in this game, but they're all about the same really. And you can disguise yourself as the guards, but it's really just a palette swap for Ethan every time you use it. Really, you're just going through the levels and you're following Luther's directions whenever he shows up on screen, and it pauses the whole game to tell you what you need to do. The plot's a little bit different than the console version, and I honestly couldn't follow it. I even looked at like other reviews and even some walkthroughs and tried to read up on what the plot is, and honestly, I couldn't tell you what this thing is about. Something about 2 organizations that are trying to get control over this like security skeleton key type device capable of breaking into anything, anywhere. I guess they're trying to do Ice Swarm, but it's really confusing. The problems with this game, the guards just don't detect you unless you walk straight in front of them. The controls are terrible. You can only have 1 gadget or gun equipped at a time, and if you cycle through them, you end up dropping your disguises. The buttons don't really make any sense, and I just kept forgetting what button would do what, and I swear it felt like the buttons would do different things at different times. And the whole thing is just kind of fine in the sense that, you know, it's a terrible Game Boy Advance port of a console release. You know, just like all those other games that would get Game Boy Advance versions, even though it made no sense to do so. But again, the sound design for the Game Boy version is the worst part. Here's what the music sounds like. And that's just a snippet of the 20-second loop that you'll hear over and 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 over again. It never stops. It plays through the whole level, which can take like 20 minutes. So be prepared to hear this same loop on repeat, and be glad that they actually have an option in the menu for you to turn off the music. So I finished this whole game, which took me about 2 hours, fight with the terrible controls and the weird fact that for some reason you can't save manually, only at certain points when the game decides that you can. It'll just stop the action mid-action and it'll pop up an option for you to save the game. So definitely a D tier game. Thank God I don't have to hear that music again. So looking back at all these games and the Mission Impossible franchise, I can't help but think that there's no shot in hell that we'll ever get another Mission Impossible game again. Not having one on the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3 just feels like such a missed opportunity. That generation was perfect for those mid-budget games to blossom and find their fan base, but there were some mobile games and an arcade game too, but I don't really think that they deserve to be in this video. But I did play all the Mission Impossible games, rank them, and this is the final tier list. If you agree or disagree, and if you think I should do this again for another franchise, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like and check out some of my other videos. And if you hated this video, just keep it to yourself because you know you watched the whole thing through already. Thanks again to my channel members for being absolutely amazing and supporting me. I'm Ice Cold Snake. I'll see you next time.